and welcome everyone to this week's episode of Craze's Corner. Tonight we're going to be breaking down our consensus top 10 wide receivers. So you're not going to want to miss this episode if you're drafting anytime soon. But first, we got some news stories to talk about. Big news story, Anthony Richardson. He's been named the Week 1 starter for the Indianapolis Colts. What this means for the team is that Michael Pittman will definitely not be talked about tonight. It's kind of a downgrade for all the passing options. Jonathan Taylor probably won't see as many targets as we hope for him to see for his fantasy value. So really, Anthony Richardson has a chance to be into that top 10 as a quarterback himself, but really a downgrade for the rest of the options there. Second news story is Ezekiel Elliott has signed a one-year deal worth up to $6 million, around $3 million guaranteed with the New England Patriots. He now comes in, and he will be in the backfield alongside Ramondre Stevenson. My personal opinion is it affects Stevenson's goal line work more than anything. I don't think he comes in and steals the receiving work that makes Stevenson so valuable, but I think it limits Stevenson's upside, and I dropped him down a few spots in my rankings. And another running back signing and ruining someone's value, Dalvin Cook has signed with the New York Jets on a one-year deal worth up to $8 million, around $6 million guaranteed on that deal. Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall, it'll be interesting to see how the Jets use them. It came out today that the Jets apparently had talked with both the running backs, and they'd okayed that Breece Hall will be their guy when he's 100% healthy. So we'll see what kind of split that is. I'm kind of projecting an Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon split with Cook getting a little bit more receiving work than A.J. Dillon. But we'll have to see how long it takes for both Breece Hall to get healthy and Dalvin Cook's coming off the shoulder injury. So it'll be definitely a situation to monitor. I want to know what you guys think about these two running back signings. Do you think, you're still going to be targeting Ramondre or Breece Hall or Dalvin Cook or Zeke in any of your drafts? You can let us know using the Media app. The Media app is a virtual press conferencing app that allows you to host a virtual press conference from your phone. An all-new version is going to be dropping soon. You'll be able to post it to any social media platform of your choosing. It's going to be great. It's available on the Google Play and the App Store. And now let's welcome in our guests, Zach and Will. Jeff will be joining us soon. How are we doing tonight?
All right, football, baby. Football.
We are getting hype. Yeah, we're getting closer to the actual thing. Fantasy drafts are happening. Zach, you are our AFC East fan. What do you think about these two running back signings with Zeke and Cook?
From a Dolphins fan perspective, I do not love it, to be totally honest, because it's just two quality players that may be at the end of their career or past their prime, but certainly a valuable piece for a team in real life fantasy or for real life football. But for fantasy, it just kind of adds a unnecessary aggravation to those two running backs that were kind of slated to have the backfield to themselves, Breece Hall and Ramondre, respectively. But yeah, I think you probably knocked down Ramondre a little bit as far as fantasy rankings.
Well, what do you think about those two signings?
I'm not as much worried about the Patriots as I am the Jets. And then you add in Aaron Rodgers, who honestly wants to throw the ball, wants to push the ball down the field. So I don't even know how this looks, right? And we probably won't know until we get in 4 or 5 weeks into the season. So you might get some steals late in your draft because they're going to be undervalued, right? Because no one knows what's going on with the Jets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Jeff, thanks for joining us. We're just talking a little bit here about the Zeke and Dalvin Cook signings. Anything you want to say about those two signings before we get into our rankings?
That's why I stayed away from Breece Hall. And just like I said last week, I never trust the Patriots. They'll probably go get Darrell Henderson as well. Probably add 3 more backs by next week. So, probably see if Terrell Davis wants to come out of retirement and play. So, Matter of fact, I heard they reached out to LaDainian Tomlinson. He just retired from the NFL Network, probably because he's going to join the Patriots. So,
Adrian Peterson, baby, here it comes.
There it is.
that, if you want to see our top 10 running back show, you can go back to last week's show. We talked about that. Both Breece Hall and Ramondre were talked about a little bit. We talked about the possibility of both those guys getting a back added to it. I personally dropped Ramondre about 5 or 6 spots in my rankings, and Breece Hall dropped about 10 or 11 spots. Dalvin Cook sits around 32 for me, and Ezekiel Elliott's around RB 38. So those are just my personal rankings about those two guys. So I dropped them both a bit, and the backups kind of see where they fall into place and where they're going around the time of my drafts. See if I'm interested or not. But like I said, today we got our top 10 consensus wide receivers. We got only 13 guys to talk about. Last week with the top 10 running backs, we had 17. So today we're a little bit more on the same page, which is nice. And staying on the same page, we all agree that Justin Jefferson is going to be the number 1 overall wide receiver. We have a Vikings fan in the house, so I don't really think there's too much we need to say about this. He was a wide receiver 1 last year. This is in an offense that lost Adam Thielen, but they did gain Jordan Addison, which still helps to keep some of that pressure off. TJ Hawkinson's there as well, so this should be an offense that's going to be stable with Kirk Cousins at quarterback. And I just think we're going to see Justin Jefferson continue to emerge as the best wide receiver in the NFL. I don't have too much more I think we need to add to that. Zach, anything you want to say? Will, Jeff?
He could somehow be even better this year.
Yeah. It's going to be scary.
That's why he's number 1. He's already amazing and he can somehow even get better.
Yeah, number 1. So there we go. Justin Jefferson. Number 2, this is where we start to disagree a little bit. We have Tyreek Hill coming in at number 2 on our rankings. Jeff and I have him at 2, and Will and Zach have him at 3. So we're high on this wide receiver. Tyreek Hill, to me, I think he's an extremely talented wide receiver, and I think he could easily go for 2K yards this year. I think that if Tua stays healthy, which I'm currently projecting him to stay healthy, I think Tyreek Hill is going to have an amazing year. I think Tua takes another step forward in this offense if he can just stay upright. I think both Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle can be extremely effective in the passing game. We'll talk about Waddle a little bit later, but I think, for Tyreek Hill, simply he's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and he's in an offense that I project to be high scoring and to have lots of yards. And there's really 2 main targets in that offense, and I think they will both eat. Zach, you are our Dolphins fan. You have him all the way down at 3. Anything you want to say about Tyreek Hill here?
He was the wide receiver 3 as far as fantasy points per game last season, led the league and deep targets, and also had 9 touchdowns. Not much to say about this guy as well, too, other than the whole Tua situation. And like I mentioned before, it's just as important for Teron Armstead to be healthy for this team, too. So it's not only just Tua, but it's the offensive line keeping him healthy. So, can't go wrong with Tyreek Hill. Another guy that could have an even better season. He wants to go for 2,000 yards, so if there's anybody in the league that can do it, it's him.
Yeah, I agree. Jeff, you got him at 2. So you're high on Tyreek Hill as well. Anything you want to add in on this Tyreek Hill thing?
Yeah, I'm just starting to realize that Jaylen Waddle is a little bit fragile. And then there's also the fact that Tyreek can score out of the backfield as well, which we know the head coach does like to go ahead and throw him in there as well. My whole thing is just Tua staying healthy. Zach, I wanted to call you all weekend because you guys, as bad as Trey Lance look, your 2 backup quarterbacks look worse. So you guys need to be on the phone with the 49ers right now trying to see what you can do for Trey Lance, man. That's the only thing where I see the wheels falling off of the Dolphins offense is if Tua goes down. Because if that happens, then all bets are off.
Yeah, for sure. All bets are off if they don't have a great quarterback there in Tua. Will, do you want to add anything to Tyreek Hill? You have him at 3.
It's the only reason he's not 2 is I'm just a little nervous about the ability of that team to stay healthy. That's all.
Yeah, that's a big concern for Tua. As Zach said, Teron Armstead, their left tackle there, and you got to worry about speedy wide receivers of one hamstring injury, and that pretty much cost you the season with Tyreek Hill's play style. He's been pretty sustainable so far throughout his career, but if one injury does tend to happen, they tend to just pile on after that. So let's hope everything goes well for this Dolphins team, and I think Tyreek Hill at 2 could definitely happen. Number 3, we have Jamarr Chase, who's currently, I think, ADP-wise, the wide receiver 2. Will, you have him at 2. Me and Zach have him at 4. This is kind of a common theme you'll see throughout the rest of these guys. Zach and I are pretty much on the same page for most of these people. As we went through our rankings there, Zach and I seem to be together. And Jeff, you have Jamarr Chase at 5. The only reason for me I couldn't put him higher than 4 is I think that he just doesn't get the same amount of receptions as the rest of these guys do. And in PPR, that's extremely important. He's going to get the yards, and he's on an offense that we all project to have lots of scoring opportunities. So I think the touchdowns will be there, but this is a guy who finished as the PPR wide receiver 5 in his rookie year. And in that year, he played, full 17 games. He had 1,400 yards and 13 touchdowns. And I could see him around that 1,500 yards and 13 touchdowns again. And if that profiles out to be around a wide receiver 4, in my opinion, for my PPR ranking. So I think that's just kind of where Jamarr Chase is. I don't think he has the ability to get up into that 120 reception mark that these other guys that we've talked about so far have been able to do and will continue to be able to do. So I think that's just where my disconnect is there for Jamarr Chase. Obviously, I still think he's going to be great at wide receiver 4. I just think that target numbers are a little bit different there. Will, we're going to go to you next because you have him as the wide receiver 2. So you think he's going to outperform Tyreek Hill. Do you think those numbers come up for receptions?
Yeah, and I think touchdowns might go up, actually. So, and I love it. It's all LSU wide receivers this year. We're going LSU, baby. Wide receiver university, and just going to just go down that list because I just think my gut, I just think he's going to have a little bit better production this year. And the other guys in that 2 to 5 range, I think there's a little bit of worries, right? Health, the team, don't know what to expect. So if I had to choose the second wide receiver, who's the sure bet that I think I can count on for the whole season? That's why I'm putting him in number 2.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm just a little nervous with the target numbers. Zach, you have him at 4, the same as me. Is there anything you want to add on Jamarr Chase?
It's also a compliment to T. Higgins and the other surrounding pieces in Cincinnati, whereas, we love Jaylen Waddle, but last year the Dolphins proved that, Bengals proved it too, that they can support 2 wide receivers.
Yeah.
But I think I'm with you as far as that extremely elite upside. Obviously, he's great. He has the most touchdowns through his first 2 seasons other than any other wide receiver other than Odell Beckham. So he's clearly special. But, Joe Burrow kind of limping around in preseason doesn't make me so confident. And I kind of like the guys that are more of an alpha role versus, having someone who's potentially just as good in T. Higgins on the other side.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. And what you said about Joe Burrow is definitely something that we need to monitor is with the calf injury, if he's not rolling out so much, he's not going to have that same, out-of-the-pocket connection that, we've seen with him and Chase is when the play breaks down, Joe Burrow goes to Jamarr Chase. And if Burrow's not able to move around quite as much as he normally does, that could also limit his upside there on those big plays that we've seen in the past. Jeff, you obviously hate Jamarr Chase. You got him all the way down there at 5. So anything you want to add here?
Well, no, just the same thing that Zach was saying. You've got 2 other receivers on that team. This Tyler Boyd is no either. And then I think there have been improvements made to the secondaries on all of the competition in the AFC North as well. So that's my other thing that I'm looking at as well.
Yeah, that's definitely fair there. We got our next guy here who's another guy on a great offense. I have him as my wide receiver 5. And so does Zach. Like I said, on the same page. Jeff and Will both have him at 4. And that's Stefon Diggs. He's going to be Josh Allen's number 1 target. I don't think anyone's going to question that. I think he's set for another great season that we've seen from him in the past. If you look at his history, PPR wide receiver 4 last year. I have him just around that mark. I have him at 5. Like I said, I think there's a couple other guys that I like a little bit more. But I think he's going to continue to be a part of one of the best offenses in the NFL. Josh Allen just stays healthy. I don't think I really have any too big concerns here. I think he's one of the safer guys that you can take. I don't think he really has any volatility in him. I don't think he could be the wide receiver 1, but I don't think he'll be outside the wide receiver 10 if he plays all 17 games. So I think he's pretty safe. Right around that 4 or 5 mark, I think is a good spot for him. Zach, as I said, you're the AFC East guru here. You got him at 5 as well. What do you want to say about Stefon Diggs?
Yeah, to go along with Jeff's point about the other teams in the division getting better on defense, certainly same thing applies to the AFC East. But at the same time, Stefon Diggs, 3 consecutive seasons with 100 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns, everything you want from a wide receiver 1. Obviously playing with a great quarterback, but he is a complete drama queen, obviously in the offseason, pulling his little shenanigans per usual. So that kind of always taints the picture for Stefon Diggs, but he's as elite as any wide receiver in the NFL. Just with the age 30 season kind of creeping up in there and Buffalo kind of disappointing season after season, there's some sort of, not a decline for this team. I don't think everybody's projecting them to be bad, but I think those days of just those crazy touchdown outputs, I don't know if they're still necessarily there for Stefon Diggs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have projected for 10 touchdowns, which is a step back from where he was last year at 13. I think that the addition of Dalton Kincaid in the red zone is definitely something that could be a factor. Gabe Davis should continue to hopefully do something. We've seen flashes every once in a while, but he never seems to be on the same page with Josh Allen. Not sure exactly why, but there's definitely some other options in there. I think James Cook, he can start to emerge out of the backfield. So the Bills are starting to get some more options around him, which just makes him less dependent, or Josh Allen less dependent on Stefon Diggs, hopefully this year. So I think that's something to keep in track. We got Will here, Vikings fan. Obviously, he knows lots about Stefon Diggs. You got him ranked at 4. What would you like to add about Stefon Diggs here?
I think they're going to force him the ball a lot. I do. I think there's going to be even more effort to get Diggs the ball. And will that be successful? We'll see. My gut is it probably is, at least for fantasy. And we'll see what happens. So, and like I said, I keep looking at all the other wide receivers around the top 10, and it's really close to me. I don't know in my ranking. I really have a big difference between 4 and 8, and it could just slide either way. But some of the other guys are getting old, and so do you trust the Davante Adams or Cooper from the Rams? Like, where are they in that? So it was kind of, for me, honestly, this was the hardest top 10 to rank, because is there really a big gap between 4 and 8 or 4 and 10 or 4 and 12? Yep. So yeah, but I have it at 4, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the way I have my tiers laid out in my draft kit, I got Justin Jefferson 1, and I got 2 guys at 2 and 3 in a tier, 2 guys at 4 and 5 in a tier, and then 6 through 13 for me are all in that same tier, where I'm like, well, I could see any of these guys kind of jumping each other and kind of in that same thing. So I definitely get what you're saying. It's definitely really close when you look at it that way, where it's like, like I said, we've only got 13 guys to talk about tonight, where last week we had 17 guys. So you can already see where, there is some play there, and, we're all kind of on the same page, but there's definitely a few guys that could come in and out of people's lists. And I think the guys that we're going to talk about that just missed other people's lists. So you're just trying to pick and choose which one you want to put in your top 10. Jeff, anything you want to say before we move on here about Stefon Diggs?
Depending on who we're moving on to, because my 4 and 5 possibly have flip-flopped, I'm not sure. The reasons why I have somebody at 4 rather than Stefon Diggs could be, for fantasy purposes, depending on what you're playing, if it's PPR or whatever, what have you. But there's a reason why I have a certain guy ahead of him for me.
Well, we're not going to talk about that guy quite yet.
What?
We're gonna go to a guy that Zach and I, again, are pretty much in agreement on here. Zach has him at 2. I have him at 3. Will got him all the way down to 7, and Jeff has him all the way down at 8. So like I said, Zach and I are on the same page here. This is a guy who's got some injury concerns at both the quarterback position and himself, and that's Cooper Kupp. When he plays, he's one of the best wide receivers, and on a point per game basis, Last year, he was absolutely fantastic. 9 games. He only played 9 games, and he finishes the wide receiver 23 in 9 games, which is absolutely amazing. And if he and Stafford can stay healthy, there's no reason for me that I don't think Cooper Kupp finishes in the top 3. I'm currently projecting him to stay healthy. I think that'll be a lot of quick passes out of this Rams offense this year. They're going to just get the ball out of Matthew Stafford's hands quick. Their line's not what it used to be. Matthew Stafford is not what he used to be when it comes to durability. But for me, I think that if Cooper Kupp's playing, he could easily be the wide receiver 1 in points per game basis this year again. And, Matthew Stafford loves him, so I love him when it comes to fantasy football. Zach, you have him at 2. What do you think about Cooper Kupp this upcoming season?
I wouldn't fault anybody that puts him in at number 1. The guy's like a created Madden character. Had the greatest wide receiver season of all time just 24 months ago. And then last year gave you enough stats that you would have been happy with your wide receiver 2. And all he did was play, and he missed 7 games. So if some of these wide receivers give you 75 receptions, 6 touchdowns, you're going to be pumped, and that's what he did with missing time. So let's give him a full season and, imagine what he does. So best wide receiver in the game, in my opinion, as far as route running. I think he could be, if he stays healthy, he's just without a doubt the best, And the only reason why I have Jefferson 1 is because we saw what Cooper Kupp's ceiling is, and granted, it's the greatest wide receiver of all time, but I think Jefferson still has another level. So that's kind of what puts Cooper Kupp at 2 for me.
Yeah, and I think, Justin Jefferson, he's a lot safer when it comes to fantasy this year, just because the injury concerns there. We're not going to go to Will yet because I already know what Will's going to say about Cooper Kupp. But, Jeff, what do you want to say about Cooper Kupp? You have him all the way down there at 7, so us having a consensus having him at 5.
Yeah, because, now we're looking at his number 2 being Van Jefferson, maybe.
Yeah.
Who else is on the other side of him right now? That's a problem. And I think it's going to be a big problem this year in the NFC West. So, that coupled with Stafford's issues, coupled with his own health issues, I don't see him as being 100% as we're already looking at him having issues, in the preseason. It's really a recipe for disaster right now for the Rams. They need a lot of stuff to go right for them to even think about being a high seed or low seed playoff team. So, that's my thing. It's just I don't think Van Jefferson scares anybody. He's had a few years to go ahead and do it, and he really hasn't. He's kind of like the de facto wide receiver 2. Unless you got, what's his name, Paco Nacho or whatever, Nakwa, whatever his name is. I don't know what the dude's name is.
Puka Naku.
Yeah, exactly.
Paco Nacho.
Well, they drafted somebody else with a name similar to that.
Yeah,
I think.
there could be some promise there.
There you go, Tutu out.
Yeah.
Tutu out.
But I don't see anybody else that is. It's going to take somebody else to pull coverage away from Cooper Kupp this year. Single coverage all day. Even a safety high on him, he's going to get the reception. But now I think they're going to be like, if you're going to beat us, it's not going to be with Cooper Kupp. They're going to be game planning to take him away.
Mm-hmm. The only thing that doesn't really concern me by that fact is we saw teams double and triple team Cooper Kupp and his wide receiver 1 year. And it didn't matter how many guys you put on Cooper Kupp, he was still beating everybme. And I think he's still that talented. And to me, you're talking about Van Jefferson being his wide receiver 2. To me, that just proves that Cooper Kupp might break the NFL receiving record for receptions this year. If him and Stafford stay healthy, I could see Cooper Kupp having over 150 catches on the year. Whether or not the touchdowns are there like they were in his number 1 finish season, I don't necessarily think he'll get back to 16 touchdowns. But if the receptions are there PPR-wise, I think he's going to be extremely solid week in, week out. You're not going to get too many bust weeks where he has like 2 catches for 10 yards or anything like that. Will, you're our Matthew Stafford hater.
I'm not even going to go there. The team is old. They're in a rebuild. I think they end up tanking to get Caleb Williams. That's just my gut. I don't think Stafford can stay healthy. I don't think Cooper can stay healthy. And if you look at their schedule, there is 3 games on the schedule that may be winnable for them. Twice with Arizona and once with the Colts. The rest of the schedule, no. Those defenses on the schedule, they're playing the AFC North and the NFC East. They're dead. They're already DOA. You can go ahead and bury the Rams. Cam Akers may be the most valuable fantasy player on that team this year. Because I don't see it.
I think you're giving the Seahawks.
Line is shaky.
The Seahawks, maybe they split with the Seahawks. Let's be real here.
Oh, Seahawks are going to kill them.
I'm just joking. I wanted to see
that Ram defense is old, and the offensive line. I mean, we could start for them this year.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, honestly, let's throw some applications out there and see if we can get.
Why not? I'll play for the veteran minimum.
I was gonna say, I hear the veteran minimum's a few $100,000. High 100,000. So that'd be nice for me.
I can't take that pay cut.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Zach.
No, I totally get it.
Zach out here making bank on us, flexing. But now, Jeff, we're going to move on to your guy here. Guy you have ranked at 3, Will at 5. And then Zach and I are lower on him. I have him at 7, which I think's a little high, to be honest, for what I'm projecting from this offense. And Zach has him at 10. And that's A.J. Brown comes in as our number 6 wide receiver. To me, I have similar concerns with A.J. Brown as I do with Jamarr Chase. Is the receptions aren't going to be there. I don't think he's going to surpass 90 receptions on the season. And I'm not necessarily sure that the touchdowns that we saw last year are going to be replicated into this year. I think that was too efficient in that offense for me. So I think when it comes down to A.J. Brown, I think 7 where I have him is a little high, to be honest. I think I'd prefer to be at that 8 to 9 range. I might have to go back and tweak some numbers and some projections there. But yeah, for me, A.J. Brown, I think last year was his ceiling, and that was PPR, wide receiver 6. I can't see him getting higher. I don't think that Jalen Hurts has another level to his passing game. I don't think that's going to be the Eagles' offense. I think they know that to win, they need to run the ball. They brought in DeAndre Swift. They have Kenneth Gainwell, who can both catch out of the backfield. Rashad Penny's there to run the ball. And, with Devonta Smith being on the other side, he's still going to get his targets. Like, this offense for me, when I was trying to project out this passing game, there's not enough to go around to feed Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. And I think that those running backs out of the backfield are going to get lots of receptions when it comes to planned screens and that kind of stuff in this offense. So for me, I think I'm a little high on him. I'd like to distribute a couple more touches around. But I think that last year was his ceiling, so I think he can only come down from that wide receiver finish in PPR. Jeff, you got him all the way up at 3, so you think that there is another level to this Eagles offense. Why are you so high on A.J. Brown?
I do, because it's what he does once he gets the ball. This guy only had, you look at everybody else, they had over 100 receptions. This guy had 88 receptions and damn near 1,500 yards. Is because it's what he does once he gets the ball in his hands. And that's why the Eagles are going to find ways to get the ball in his hands. So that's what I'm looking where some guys might have regressions as far as how many receptions come his way. This dude doesn't need a whole lot of receptions to be productive. That's why I put in the disclaimer. It depends if you are in a full PPR league, then you may want to go with guys that are getting you more receptions. But for this dude to get yards and get to the end zone, it's just like that's what he does. And before, I was a guy where I was like, I didn't really think that he was a great receiver, but now, like I said, he's almost to me like a healthier Deebo Samuels, where he is just hard to bring down. He's a big, strong dude. And when he gets that ball in his hands, and then again, we're looking at the NFC, East that he's in. Other than maybe Diggs from the Cowboys, it's like, who else are you really looking at in the secondary that's going to stop him? Nobody with the Commanders kind of scares me. Nobody really with the Giants really scares me. So, that's the other thing that I look at as well.
Will, what do you want to say about A.J. Brown? You have him at 5, so a little bit ahead of where we have him.
The reason I got him up is I think Jalen Hurts and the supporting cast puts a lot of pressure on a defense. And it makes you play man. It's hard. Like the Eagles are just a hard matchup if Hurts is playing his game. Because you have to keep a spy on him so that's one less guy in coverage. DeAndre Swift adds pressure to a nickel dime defense about how you're handling him coming out of the backfield. And so the reason that's why I got AJ up at 5, because I think he's going to get opportunities that if he was on a team like with the Vikings, where you have a stationary quarterback, you could double. It's hard. It's going to be hard to double team or take a player out of this Philadelphia offense this year. It just is.
Zach, you are the lowest at 10 for AJ Brown. What did you want to say about AJ Brown? Are you worried about the efficiency we saw last year?
1,000%. That's all it is. And another compliment to the guy that plays on the other side of him, in Devonta Smith. Career highs across the board for AJ Brown last year, and it gave him that wide receiver 6 finish.
Yeah.
So figure kind of regression has to come for someone that puts up a career high, unless he puts up another career high season, which I'm certainly not banking on that. I mean, just for reference, for the share of air yards, AJ Brown was like top 6 in the NFL with that percentage of the air yards from Jalen Hurts, and he ran fewer routes than Devonta Smith. So it's a crazy efficiency thing, like you were saying, Jeff. It's not the PPR thing; it's what he does with the ball in his hand, or his ability to just, sometimes it's just hard to catch a deep ball because you're trying to locate the ball. You got a defender all over you, and he's just really good at that. Him and Jalen Hurts obviously have the connection, but it's just when I look at some of these other guys, I play in, obviously all PPR leagues, but especially full PPR. I think that's where I really feel he's close to that 10 range. And if you want to bump him up maybe a spot or two in half PPR, then that's totally cool too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I just pulled up my projections for this Eagles offense, and I know I wasn't a fan when I projected this offense out because I got around 60 targets going to the backfield split between the 3 backs there. I got 80 receptions for AJ Brown, 77 for Devonta Smith. So I feel like, they're going to spread that out a little bit. I'm way lower on Dallas Goedert than most other people because I just didn't have the receptions and yards to give him. I got him for 51 receptions and 572 yards, which feels really low. And last year you talked about his air yard percentage for the Eagles offense, and that doesn't even bring into the fact that he scored half the receiving touchdowns for the team last year. And I have him projected for 10 touchdowns and Jalen Hurts throwing for 21. So, again, I have him right around that number. I just think that I don't think the receptions are going to be there. And I think the efficiency has just got to come back down to earth a little bit. So, I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to have some more big boom weeks and some more bust weeks than some of these other guys that are going to be just a little more consistent throughout the season. We want to talk about a guy who had lots of touchdowns last year. This is a guy who I said would be the wide receiver 1. I said you probably draft him as your wide receiver 1, if not the wide receiver 2. That's Davante Adams, who finished, I believe, I'm going to pull it up right now, but he finished around where I was telling you, wide receiver 3 in PPR. So if you listen to me, people were worried about the Derek Carr thing. I wasn't super worried there. I have him at 6 with Jeff, Zach at 7, and Will at 9. I think that the touchdowns come down a little bit. We saw Derek Carr hyper-target Davante Adams, like I was projecting to happen. They just had that special connection where anytime they're near the red zone or anywhere near close to that, Davante Adams was the guy. It didn't matter if Derek Carr was dropping back to pass. Davante Adams was going to be his first look. It seemed like when we were watching that Raiders team last year. I think Jimmy Garoppolo can come in and be a serviceable quarterback. I don't think he necessarily is able to replicate what we saw that way with targets for Davante Adams. So I think those things do drop down a little bit. Last year, he had 1,500 yards and 14 touchdowns. I have him projected for just under 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns. And that put him as my wide receiver 6 in PPR format. But the touchdowns, I think he'll still be in double-digit touchdowns with Jimmy Garoppolo because I think this offense can be, I don't think it's going to be as good as it was last year, but I think it can definitely still be good. They added Jacoby Myers, which I think helps take a little bit of the pressure off, and now Hunter Renfrow should be healthy. So maybe I have his receptions coming down from 100 to 94 because I think that there is a little bit more to do that way. They added Austin Hooper and Michael Mayer at tight end, but they lost Darren Waller, who had a high target share there. So I think that he's kind of a guy that you're just going to be able to rely on. I think he will definitely have some bad weeks in this offense. I don't fully trust Jimmy Garoppolo. So in that 6 to 10 range, I think, wide receiver 6 to 10 range, I think you can be very comfortable with Davante Adams. Jeff, you have him at 6 as well. What do you want to say about Davante Adams this year? Are you worried about Jimmy Garoppolo?
I'm a little bit worried about Jimmy Garoppolo, but I'm even more worried about the absence of Josh Jacobs. To me, Zamir White is not the guy. As we've been seeing in the preseason, that running game may put defenses on their heels as well, to where it was just both of them. You had to watch Adams, you had to watch Jacobs. Now with a downgraded quarterback and now a downgrade in the running game, it's like a lot more focus is going to be on Davante Adams. He's good enough to overcome it, but still, it's not as optimal as it was last year. And, of course, it's the Raiders as well. So he's got all those things working against him, or he'd probably be like my third-rated wide receiver if it wasn't for all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Zach, what do you want to add to the Davante Adams discussion?
I was one of those guys that was not feeling it last year, and I'll take my L on that take. But I'm not doing it 2 years in a row. You're not going to get me twice. It's for sure giving me not great vibes. Having Jimmy Garoppolo to start with, the fact that he'll be 31 in December, and we saw Derek Carr produce number 1 wide receivers prior to Davante Adams arriving in Las Vegas. Can you guys tell me a wide receiver 1 that Jimmy Garoppolo has ever supported?
Debo Samuel.
A real wide receiver. Real wide receiver.
Handoffs.
Not a running back. So that's kind of my thing too. It's like, maybe Davante Adams is so great he can overcome 2 years of what we would call mediocre quarterbacks. But I'm just not willing to take that chance on a guy that's going to be 31. It's no shade to him. He's a great wide receiver. But the risk factor is what kind of puts him in that range for me.
Yeah, and you still have him at the wide receiver 7, so obviously you still think he's going to be good. Yeah. And I think another thing to monitor with the Davante Adams situation is if Davante Adams isn't really getting the work he wants come week 4, as Will likes to say, Davante Adams will definitely be one of those wide receivers to say, enough's enough. I want you to trade me.
True.
And I think that's something that could also happen for Davante Adams here is if he's not, he came to Las Vegas to play with Derek Carr. And he was visibly unhappy on social media when they decided to let Carr go. So I think that's something we need to monitor with Davante Adams too, is he could end up on a different team come mid-season. Will, you're the lowest on Adams. You have him at 9. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think that he could go as high as 3 if he gets moved.
Mm-hmm.
If something happens and a team
Chiefs wide receiver 1.
Shoot the Jets. I mean, it just depends what the Raiders. I mean, can the Raiders absorb a? Yeah, I mean they can absorb trading him and with their cap situation. So if the Raiders feel like they can get a first or a couple of first round picks, yeah, and it's there'll be some desperate team that'll say, hey, I'm a Viking fan. I remember the Vikings trading for Randy Moss again. And bringing him back, right? Because they felt they needed that. Like you said, Davante's feel like he's not getting the ball. If the team is horrible, he's not sticking around, and they'll move him. And that now, like you said, he ends up in Kansas City. Woo! He goes from 10 to maybe, honestly, 1. He could be 1 if that's the trade that happens.
Yeah, I doubt it. I doubt we see the in-division trade, but it's just fun to think about.
Al Davis would come out of his grave to not let that trade. Can you imagine the Raiders giving the Chiefs Davante Adams?
Or maybe the Cowboys, somebody that would feel desperate, like, hey, the pressure's on us. We need another piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he could end up on a different team. I don't know exactly, depending on where it goes. It'll depend on the situation, but it's Davante Adams. To me, he's still a top 2 wide receiver in the NFL. He's in my opinion, the best route runner in the NFL. And he's still elite when it comes to that. I think we're all just a little worried that Jimmy Garoppolo is not Derek Carr.
Little.
Who thought we'd say that? is not.
What a statement!
He's not as good as Derek Carr.
Right.
No
Wait. There's that statement.
Yeah.
He's not as good as Derek Carr, and we're
Yikes.
worried. Worried would be okay. I don't know what feeling I am with Garoppolo and with the Raiders.
Yeah, who knows? Garoppolo might not even end up playing the entire year there. I think that their rookie could come in.
Aiden O'Connell that somebody picked up in our league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder who has O'Connell on his team. That would be me.
Now he's got about 19 quarterbacks on his roster.
Right.
Just a few. Okay. Got a few. I got 3 rookies there: Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, and Aiden O'Connell. I picked up off the waivers because no one else wanted him. So I feel like, he could end up starting some games close to the end of the year here if things don't go well. You might as well throw him in there because Jimmy Garoppolo is not the quarterback of the future. And, Will just brought up the Jets as a possible landing spot for Davante Adams for this next guy's sake. I hope not.
Yeah.
And that's Garrett Wilson. Will and Zach, you have them both at 6. I have him at 8, and Jeff decided not to put him in his top 10. I think when you look at Garrett Wilson, you look at who I project to be the best wide receiver on this offense. I think he's going to lead the team in targets. I don't have him leading the team in receiving touchdowns because I think Allen Lazard will still take that with his connection with Aaron Rodgers, and he's just a bigger body wide receiver. But I think you look at what Garrett Wilson did last year. He was great, wide receiver 23, and I think he's just going to continue to build off that. And now he has a real quarterback. And the connection from everything we've heard in camp so far is that Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers have been on the same page. And I think that if, you look at this team, the way that I have them statted out, I think that this is going to be an Aaron Rodgers offense. They're going to throw the ball a lot. And anything we know about Aaron Rodgers, number 1 wide receivers, no matter who it is they're always elite for fantasy football. And I think that continues here with Garrett Wilson. Zach, what do you want to say? Again, AFC East, what do you want to say about Garrett Wilson?
Yeah, at least I'm not biased here, right? So, because I have him for pretty much a breakout season in comparison to, I think, what his current ranking, I think, would be consensus-wise. But stop me if you heard this before. Dalvin Cook in the backfield with a quarterback who's great in the regular season and then shits the bed in the playoffs. That duo produced Justin Jefferson, right? And I'm not saying that's an equivalent setup, but, if you want to make the fun story, there's the kind of connection. But obviously, Garrett Wilson is an incredible talent. If you watch Hard Knocks, you can already tell the fact that very rarely does a team draft the offensive rookie of the year and the defensive rookie of the year. So when you imagine the fact that every day he's going against one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, on top of it, the whole iron sharpens iron kind of thing. So he's literally getting better every day, and he'll now go on the field and face lesser cornerbacks than he's used to seeing on a weekly basis. With Aaron Rodgers, who I really hate how cool he is watching Hard Knocks, and I'm truly kind of a fan of him, to be totally honest. And the way he throws the ball is just so pretty. And, I think it's wheels up for the Jets. And Garrett Wilson check the list. Second-year wide receiver. Always good for a breakout.
Mm-hmm. And you even look at his numbers from last year. He had over 80 receptions for 1,100 yards. And if you look at that, I think that'll go up a little bit. But the thing I think that changes a lot for me is now I project this offense to score a lot more points than they did last year. And I think his touchdowns will 100% come up from 4, which is what he had last year. If he can get close to 9-10 in that range, I think that this really just elevates him to being one of the best wide receivers for fantasy football. Will, we'll go to you next. You had him.
If I had to pick somebody that could sleep into 1-2 contention, it's him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if he's got that connection.
80 receptions last year with that disaster of a quarterback situation? 80? Oh no. No, he's gonna get close to 100 receptions. He's gonna get close to 10 touchdowns. It's gonna be scary.
He was like, not to interrupt you, but I was just gonna say, just piggyback what you're saying. He had 1,000 yards, and he was one of 3 wide receivers to have fewer than 5 touchdowns with 1,000 receiving yards, right? It's like almost guaranteed to go up.
That's a DJ Moore stat line if I've ever seen it.
Right,
yeah. So I got him at 6, and I honestly wanted to move him up because I just think Rodgers is on a mission. This Jet team is either going to fly high or they're going to burn and crash. There's no in between. It's going to be this or it's going to be this.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be good for the regular season for sure, and I think the stats are going to be there. Jeff, you did not have Garrett Wilson in your top 10. Why not?
Close. He's close. There's just some other guys that I think have more of a body of work. You know, the upside is definitely there with him. That is my only issue. One of the guys who may not be on your list, but he is going to be the same thing, a number one in Detroit, who I think is going to throw the ball a lot, that's Amon St. Raw. They could actually probably flip spots on my list. The only thing, again, is the defenses that are in that division. We really don't know what they are going to be yet. I think they're going to have the ball in their hands a lot because of that defense. But I remember, just like what you guys are saying, everything looks like the upside is really there with this team that they've assembled. But I also remember that second year of Michael Vick with the Philadelphia Eagles when they had what did they call that team? Where they were basically like everybody's going to be in the Hall of Fame after this season with this team.
Yeah,
that was
they ended up not doing
the dream team.
The dream team.
The NFL
dream team. Exactly. So that's why I'm just like, I've seen the opposite side of that before. I'm not saying that's going to happen with the Jets, but it could. You got Nathaniel Hackett there. You don't really know. I mean, he was that year that A-Rod and Davante Adams were in Green Bay. They had a pretty decent year, but that offense wasn't great. So, it's a lot of upside. There's some other guys that have a proven body of work. I think Amon St. Brown is just a little bit more physically dominant than Garrett Wilson to me. It's just a matter of choice. I think they're both going to have great seasons. I could be wrong. Garrett Wilson could absolutely explode, but it's one of those things to where you're betting on that.
Look, as an NFC North guy, I just can't. I can't let us say we're going to have a comparison between Jared Goff and Aaron Rodgers. And look, I'm a Viking fan, but I got to defend Aaron Rodgers for that. It's night and day different. Mm-hmm. It's not. The quarterback has a proven record into the Jets.
What were the rankings over the especially last year, between Goff and Aaron?
Yeah, last year. Well, we'll see how teams adapt to the Lions now, and how the Lions. 1 year, this is the Lions, right? They emerge from hibernation once every 10 years, and then they go back to the sorry state of a franchise that they have been. Mm-hmm. And so when Jared Goff can consistently perform, I just can't let y'all say that he's the same breadth of a quarterback consistently with Aaron Rodgers.
Which quarterback has been to a Super Bowl in the last 5 years out of those two?
Which quarterback knows where the sun rises?
Which quarterback knows where the Super Bowl was at because he was there playing?
Which quarterback?
I'm not saying that Jared Goff is a supreme talent, but he's no slouch. So
yeah, we'll get to Amon-Ra in a bit, and I think the real reason that Garrett Wilson didn't make Jeff's top 10 is because he's a Seahawks fan. He had to slide one of them into the top 10. let's not play like it was Amon-Ra St. Brown that kicked Garrett Wilson out the top 10. It wasn't. But we'll get to that later. Coming in at number 9 is Ceedee Lamb. Jeff, you're the highest on him, 7. Will, 8. Zach, 9. And he's my wide receiver, 13. I'm worried about the offense with Mike McCarthy calling plays. I think Brandon Cooks is still a good wide receiver. I think he's going to get his targets and his valuable targets. He's going to get some touchdowns. I still think Michael Gallup is a decent wide receiver. I think he's going to get his targets. He's going to get his touchdowns. Tony Pollard is amazing out of the backfield. I think he's going to get his targets, and he's going to get his touchdowns. So to me, I think just when you're looking at how much higher can Ceedee Lamb go, I think that there's just a lot going on in this offense, and I don't trust Mike McCarthy. He's the last wide receiver in that tier that we were talking about earlier where everyone's kind of close together, and I could see Ceedee Lamb getting up into that top 10 for sure. He just has the biggest question mark for me, and that is Mike McCarthy. Jeff, you're the highest on Ceedee Lamb. So You think that he's going to be able to overcome Mike McCarthy?
I do, because I think the real head coach, Jerry Jones, is going to be like, get that man the ball. Honestly, that's it. Jerry Jones is going to make sure that CeeDee Lamb gets the ball. That's who he's going to allow Dak to throw the ball to, is CeeDee Lamb. So I can see that. Whether there's an increase in interceptions or whatever would have you,
I don't really think the interception can go up anymore.
Dak Prescott will be forcing that ball to CeeDee Lamb this season.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of mouths to feed now in this Dallas offense. Will, you're our Dallas resident. What do you think about CeeDee Lamb?
Look, it is a trip living in Dallas and listening to all the local sports and the panic. One day, the reports out of Oxnard, everything great, and then Dak throws 3 interceptions, and the world is falling apart. So the expectations, the burden here is so crazy. I don't know if any quarterback can live up to it. I don't know if any wide receiver can live up to it. And so I share that because I think the pressure is unrealistic, and I'm not sure this team is built to handle pressure. And if Dak starts forcing because Jerry's like, get in the ball, this season's not going to go well for the Cowboys. No. And it should. The Cowboys should be a top 4 team in the NFL with the talent on that roster. But I'm hearing the talk around here, it's just crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I think Mike McCarthy is an issue there. Zach, what do you want to say about CeeDee Lamb? He just snuck into your top 10.
Yeah, well, his breakout season came on the back of Dak Prescott leading the league in interceptions and missing 4 games. Let's correct that a little bit, and maybe CeeDee Lamb can finish even higher. This is a guy that's the draft capital, everything is there. Like you were saying, Jera is he wants to force that 88. That 88. They were talking about how in the stands there's still more Des Bryant and Michael. I can't believe I'm blanking on his name right now. Michael Irvin, thank you. There's more 88 jerseys of those guys than there are CeeDee Lamb jerseys. They got to correct that. We already brought up that the NFC East doesn't have any real, scary cornerbacks to really contend with. So Dak Prescott stays on the field and doesn't throw a ton of interceptions again, or at least just minimizes it. CeeDee Lamb is still in another position to have another 1,000-yard season. I mean, he had 1,300 last season. It was super quiet 1,300-yard season for CeeDee Lamb. So dude's definitely elite for sure.
Yeah, I have him for around 1,100 yards. I do think the addition of Brandon Cooks, I think, is an underrated addition for them. We've seen him be the number 1 wide receiver on every other team he's been on other than in this situation. I don't think he comes in to be the number 1 wide receiver at this point in his career, but I still think he's going to get, Dak's going to look at him. And I think, Dalton Schultz leaving definitely opens up some targets, but they did draft another tight end. Jake Ferguson is still there. Like I said, I think Michael Gallup, if he stays healthy, he's going to be in that 45 reception range. So it's just a lot to put on the back of Mike McCarthy, and not my favorite bet to make. I would rather have this next guy who Jeff was talking about earlier, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jeff, you're not the highest on him. Zach's got him at 8. You have him at 9, and I have him at 10. He did not make Will's list. For me, I think we've seen everything from Amon-Ra St. Brown since he's been in the league. He's amazing, and Jared Goff loves to target him. With Jameson Williams missing 6 games, I think that's very important for Amon-Ra to be this high in my rankings. I have him for just under 100 receptions for 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns, and he comes in as the wide receiver 10. And I think those are very attainable numbers. I think in this offense, Jared Goff's still going to put up stats. Whether or not he's an actual good for football, NFL football quarterback, I think that's definitely still up for debate. But in this offense, I think that the numbers are going to be there. And I think Amon-Ra, he's the number 1 wide receiver on this team. I think, like I said, the receptions are going to be there. I think he's really safe. He's week in, week out. When Jameson comes back, I think it'll be a little bit more competition for targets with Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield as well. So I think that's something to just kind of keep an eye on. I think he'll do more in the first half of the year than the second half of the year. But I think overall he'll finish still probably within that top 10. Zach, you're the highest on Amon-Ra St. Brown this year. Are you worried about Jameson Williams coming back after week 6 and taking a little bit of his work away, or you think that Amon-Ra is still going to be a dominant wide receiver?
Yeah, I mean, he's super dominant. It's funny that you had him kind of entangled with Garrett Wilson because it's kind of a similar profile here. You got a guy that's super talented with a ton of impressive metrics, third in target per route run, eighth in red zone targets, fourth in yak, and he only had 6 touchdowns. So you figure if those numbers can kind of go up a little bit, and if he keeps up, in PPR leagues, especially in PPR, he's a guy I really want to leave my drafts with. Love his ADP, love the value. The dude is just simply different. I mean, his dad was Mr. Olympia or whatever it's called.
Mm-hmm.
His brother plays in the NFL, and he keeps track of everyone that's ever, accomplished more than him, and keeps that list in his back pocket and checks it off as he goes. So you got to love the attitude and the overall just upside that he brings.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, is there anything you want to add? I know you touched on him a little bit earlier. Anything you want to add to Amon?
No, they're just looking at last season. I believe he was injured for a while as well. So if he can stay healthy this year, and their offense looks as good as it did last year, I can see him kind of going up. He's got a lot of upside.
Yeah, I agree. I think you got that upside built in with the fact that he's already going a little bit behind because people are worried. Add Jahmyr Gibbs, who's going to see his targets for sure. Jameson should eventually be back. He's dealing with a hamstring injury now too, so things are definitely not looking good on that front. But Will, you don't have Amon Ra in your top 10. Was he close for you?
Yeah, I would have him top 15, but look, he got injured this morning. And everybody's not sure. It looked like he was running around, but he was injured this morning. So, and he does have a little bit of an injury issue sometimes. Mm-hmm. And playing on that turf, it just worries me. And honestly, like I said, when Goff can consistently do like he did last year, then I'll be a believer. But we'll see. I mean, we see teams rise. There's film on them now. Every team in the NFL has film on them. They are the hot team that everybody, what were the odds? Like I saw a story yesterday. They said the Lions are the one team that's Vegas is most vulnerable, based on bets for NFC champions and for Super Bowls. So if the Lions win, Vegas is taking a little bit of a bath. So we'll see. We'll see how the Lions respond from being the team no one respected to the team everybody says, hey, they could be a sleepy contender here, and see how they handle that pressure. Because people are not going to take them lightly. Teams are going to be prepared, and they're going to go in there, and it's going to be those aren't going to be the same games they walked into last year.
No, for sure they're not. And I think, as you said, they're now probably, if not the favorites to win the division, they're close to it.
They're the favorites. By far, they should be the favorites.
So I think you got a team that now has expectations, as you said. Some teams they play much better as the underdog. Mm-hmm. We'll see what this Dan Campbell-led team does there. So that rounds out our top 10 consensus rankings. We got a couple more guys to talk about. We're going to talk about the next guy who came in at 11 because I have him ranked as wide receiver 9. And that's the guy who finished last year as the wide receiver 8. And his quarterback missed some time, and that's Jaylen Waddle. You take Jaylen Waddle, in my opinion, he's the number 2 target in this offense, behind, hopefully, a healthy Tua, Teron Armstead, and Tyreek Hill. I think that he's going to continue to put up numbers. I think the receptions come up a little bit. He only had 75 last year. I think that number comes back up a bit. When Tua wasn't playing, Waddle wasn't as good as when he was playing. Tyreek Hill was able to kind of play better or play at the same level stats-wise when Tua wasn't in there, just because he is that type of a player. But with Tua, I think that Jaylen Waddle can easily be another top 10 finish. I think that the yards are going to be there, the targets are going to be there, the connection's there. If Tua's out scrambling a little bit, he knows exactly where Jaylen Waddle's going to be, and Jaylen Waddle knows exactly where Tua wants him to be. And I think when I'm projecting out this offense, Braxton Berrios, Chosen Anderson, Cedric Wilson, no one's really scaring me to come back up and, emerge as the wide receiver 3 and take away targets from Jaylen Waddle. Mike Gesicki's not there anymore. I'm not really worried about Durham Smythe eating into any of Jaylen Waddle's work. And although the running backs I do have projected to get some work in the receiving game, I don't really think that's going to come at the expense of Jaylen Waddle. Those are just going to be dump-offs and that kind of stuff when Tua's under pressure, just needs to get the ball away. So for me, I think it's a no-brainer to have Jaylen Waddle in my top 10. Zach, you're a Dolphins fan. Jaylen Waddle was not in your top 10. Was he close, and do you think he can finish in the top 10 again?
Well, with my ranking of him at wide receiver 12, I think there's a slight chance he gets squeezed into the top 10. I watched a lot of this team last year, obviously, and a lot of plays where it's Tua making something happen, and Jaylen Waddle. He's known for a speed guy, but he's got bunnies, as the kids say. He can get up there. And there was a lot of plays that were made that way. Another efficiency guy, but yeah, no, I don't hate this at all. He could easily finish right at that same mark at wide receiver 8, and I would not blink at all, especially if you factor in the fact that Tua plays the whole season. If that happens, then it's very easy to imagine both Dolphins wide receiver finishing top 10.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like I said, I got a projection for the efficiency to come down a little bit and the receptions to go up a little bit. And that's where he fell in the rankings. Jeff, Will, anything you guys want to say? I know you guys each have one more guy we're going to talk about here. We'll leave your guy, Jeff, for a little bit because I think everyone knows what's coming. Will has a little bit of a more interesting pick that I think we can dive into a little bit more, and that's Chris Olave as his wide receiver 10. I have Chris Olave just outside. He's still in that same tier that we're talking about where all these guys can kind of finish within that range. I have him ahead of Ceedee Lamb. Chris Olave came in at 12 for me. I think, to me, when you look at a Derek Carr-led offense, there's always one guy.
It's Olave.
I think it will be Olave. I have Michael Thomas projected to play around 14 games. So I think that some targets go there. Some targets are going to go to the tight end position, and Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams out of the backfield are going to get some. But I think for me, Olave should be the dominant wide receiver 1 in this offense. So I do think he could be a top 12 wide receiver for sure. Will, you had him in your top 10. You obviously think it's going to be Olave. Any concerns?
I mean, 72 receptions last year, 4 touchdowns. With that disaster of a team.
I think they're still going to be a disaster of a team, though.
But they're going to put up. They have better quarterback situation this year than they had last year, by far. And so, if he got 72 with that mess, and he was targeted 119 times, right? So, look, I think he's going to get about 130 targets. He's going to get 80 to 100 receptions, and he's going to double his TDs. And to me, that puts him in top 10 contention. It should put him in top 10 contention. If he's at 90 receptions, 8 touchdowns, 1,400 yards, yeah,
I think, like you said, as I said, Derek Carr, he produces, whether it's Darren Waller, Davante Adams, it's always someone. Even Hunter Renfrow had his time as being a wide receiver 1 for Derek Carr. It's always someone, and if it is Olave that he chooses, and to me, I just really don't want to see, for Olave's sake, the reemergence of Michael Thomas. It just worries me a little bit.
If you're going to ask me the receiver that worries me on the Saints taking away from Olave, it's A.T. Perry. He's had a great camp, and I could see him taking over the starting spot from Thomas halfway through the season.
It could happen. I think Michael Thomas still has it. I don't know if he's going to be, what he once was. I don't think he will. But I think he can still be a good wide receiver. And another thing that worries me is we talked about Mike McCarthy being the head coach in Dallas. That worries me a little bit. I have even stronger feelings towards the Saints coaching staff. And I don't think they know what they're doing when it comes to being a good for fantasy football team. I don't think they know what they're doing when it comes to being a good football team in the NFL. So, for me, a couple things there. Zach, Jeff, anything you want to say about Chris Olave?
There was last season, no knock to Olave. He's a great receiver, but he really had nobody else. Jarvis Landry, come on, he's not even in the league right now, man, and he's hurt all the time. Thomas was hurt. Who do you have, Marquez Callaway? There was nobody else to throw the ball to, really. Even Kamara was hurt, for a good portion of the season. So, he was the only constant in that offense last year. You even had Juwan Johnson getting some targets. So that's my only thing with him. When I was watching the game this weekend, watching Carr on the sideline, he's talking to Thomas. So it's almost like, that same thing. I'm not saying that Thomas is definitely going to be his number 1 guy, but it was like 2 veterans coming together like, this is what we're going to be doing. So there could be some chemistry there. So that's why I'm thinking, I don't know which way Olave's numbers are going to go. They could go slightly up. He's going to have more competition this year for receptions. That's all I'm saying, than he did last year. Great receiver, but still there's other guys that I believe are going to be fighting for receptions as well.
I think that's fair. Anything you wanted to add there, Zach?
Nope. I think if different situation last year, Chris Olave could have been the offensive player of the year.
Yeah.
Had metrics pretty similar to Garrett Wilson. And I recently did a mock draft, and I had the 6th pick, took Bijan first round, is 12 team. Came back around, got Garrett Wilson in the 2nd, and then came back around the 3rd and got Chris Olave. I think if you can somehow pull off that heist, I think that's a good pairing. So definitely a second-year wide receiver you want to get on your team.
And as you've been one to say, second-year wide receivers breakout is very likely. We got one more guy to talk about here. Jeff, I'll let you run away with this one. Who somehow found their way in your top 10?
DK Metcalf. You can't double him anymore. All you got to do is throw the ball up. We're not even going to have to run it in when we're at the 5-yard line. Just throw it up. Nobody can jump with this dude. You can't double him now. Did you see JSN this first preseason game? That's going to be Olave West for the Seahawks as well. So I'm looking at mainly touchdown receptions that he's going to get. He's going to be a monster in the red zone. Again, he's another one of those guys, ball after the catch. He's hard to bring down. I'm looking at him to explode this season. There it is.
I can't put DK Metcalf in my top 10. They just drafted Jefferson. Yeah, that's obviously not great for when it comes to, oh my God, this guy, he needs targets. He needs touchdowns. They have Tyler Lockett still. They have some good
airing it out this year, baby.
Who they're paying. And I'm not really willing to bet that Geno Smith is going to support DK, Tyler Lockett, Jason, the tight ends, and they're supposed to be one of the best rushing teams in the NFL. Something.
It all makes it easier for DK to be open.
And I have
who
DK,
matches up with him one-on-one? Nobody.
I have DK as my wide receiver 15, so I'm not like in that far off from being a top 10 wide receiver, but he is in that tier below with DeAndre Hopkins, T. Higgins, and those type of players for me. So that's kind of where I'm at. Zach, Will, you guys want to say anything about DK Metcalf before we wrap it up here?
Yeah, I'm right there with you with the wide receiver 15 ranking.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where he is. I just went and made some adjustments. I have moved A.J. Brown down from 7 to 9. So that does change. I just bumped up Garrett Wilson, and actually I bumped down A.J. Brown. Just took away a touchdown and gave it to Dallas Goedert to try and bump him up my rankings a little bit because I feel like I was too low on him.
There you go.
So I think that way, Garrett Wilson 7, Jaylen Waddle 8, A.J. Brown 9, and Amon runs up my top 10. I feel pretty comfortable with that. But like I said, that is our consensus top 10s. Next week, I want to do a mock draft episode where we get to take these guys that we've been talking about in our top 10s and go a little deeper. We'll do a mock draft with whoever can make it. We'll draft from different positions, 12-team PPR league, so you'll be able to come see different strategies. I can tell you there will not be any kickers involved in this mock draft. There will not be any defenses involved in this mock draft. So if you're looking,
Can I draft Cordell Patterson?
He'll be available, but he's hurt right now. So I mean, I don't know if you want to take that risk. He will be reevaluated before week 1 to see if he's going to be ready to play. So we'll see what even happens with that. But if you want Cordell Patterson as your last pick in the draft, just because, I mean, I don't think I can contact Sleeper and get them to take him out of the draft, so he'll be there for you.
Okay.
That's the direction you want to go. But like I said, so tune in next week. Hope you guys enjoyed our top 10 wide receivers show. Quarterbacks and running backs are posted on YouTube, so you can go back and check those out. A little bit changed the running back rankings, obviously, with those signings, but we talked a little bit about that during that show and a little bit about that today. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you, Zach, Will, and Jeff for joining. And have a good night.
Peace out.
Peace.
Football.
Broncos country.
That's right.